When the Legends Die, Chapter 36. It was almost noon when he wakened, and for a few minutes he didn't know where he was. All cities sounded pretty much alike, especially from a hotel room. Los Angeles and New York had a beat, a throb that you felt beyond the noises actually heard. Chicago had a confusion of beats. Denver and Dallas lacked the throb. He lay listening and heard the sounds of construction across the street. This must be New York. Somehow, he always picked a New York hotel just across the street from a new building going up or an old one coming down. In Philadelphia, he always seemed to choose a hotel where they were tearing up an old street or putting down a new one. This was New York. He remembered now. He rode at Garden last night, a white bronc called Forked Lightning. There weren't many white horses in the bucking strings, maybe because they weren't supposed to have the fight, the stamina. Forked Lightning was plenty mean, though, gave him a battle, and tonight he would ride a bronc they called Sky Rocket, a big roan, maybe the same one they called Lights Out a few months ago. They kept changing names. Sky Rocket tonight, and tomorrow a dun they called Suicide. Then he would pack his gear, get in his car, drive, sleep in another hotel, ride in another show. He stared at the ceiling of the room. It was sky blue. The drapes were a darker blue. The furniture still darker, blue, the female color. He was surprised to think of that. He hadn't thought of the old way in a long time. Blue for the South, the gentle, the female. Black for the North, the harsh, the male. He put the thought away from him. Blue was blue. He yawned and stretched and felt the deep old aches. His right knee throbbed, the knee that was smashed in Denver 6 years ago. Or was it 7? No matter. There was a dull ache in his left shoulder, the stiff one. The aches you could live with. But neither of his collarbones ached that morning. His right ankle was sore, but a hot shower would loosen it up and somewhat ease the other aches. He got up, showered, shaved, and dressed. He went downstairs and on his way to the dining room stopped at the newsstand and bought an evening paper. He leafed through it after he had given his order and found the feature story on the inside page. The scowling photograph with the slit mouth, the crooked nose, the wide cheekbones, the scar across the chin. The headline read, "The Killer Rides Again." The first few lines were so familiar he could have read them with his eyes shut. Tom Black is back in the garden with the rodeo, and the crowds are waiting for him to kill another horse. Black, a full-blooded Indian, is known to rodeo buffs as Killer Tom, Devil Tom, and an assortment of other grim nicknames. He had earned them all. A veteran bronc rider, Tom Black has ridden 9 horses to death in the rodeo arena, and at every performance, the spectators expect him to kill another one. The story went on for another half column, full of vivid detail, of which the greater part was only half true. Tom had read that story 100 times. Apparently, the rodeo publicity men kept it mimeographed to hand out to the reporters. The waitress brought the steak and eggs he had ordered, and he put the paper aside and ate. Actually, he'd been involved in the death of only 6 horses, counting the one in Aztec, and that one wasn't even in the records. But several other broncs had to be retired, wind broken, or spirit broken after he rode them. He had to admit that, to himself at least. He finished his meal, paid his check, and went out into the street. He walked aimlessly until his right knee began to throb. Then he caught a bus and rode to the end of the line, far uptown. He got off, found a bench at the edge of a tiny patch of fence grass, and watched the pigeons. 2 small boys were chasing the pigeons, and when they flew, they made a whistling sound that reminded Tom of the doves that used to pick up waste grain in the corrals and sit on the ridge of the barn at the place on the San Juan. Red used to try to shoot those doves with his 30-30 rifle, but so far as Tom knew, Red never killed a dove. Mio used to say Red couldn't hit a horse inside the barn with the door shut, and Mio was probably right. Red wasn't much of a marksman. The pigeons flew and circled and came back, and the boys chased them again. Finally, the boys tired of that game and came and gawked at Tom. One shouted, "He is, too! He's that Indian that kills horses in the rodeo!" The other one shouted, "That's a lie! If he's an Indian, where's his bow and arrow?" And the first one cried, "Stupid! Indians use guns just like anybody else. If I had my gun, I'd shoot him right now. Bang, bang, powie!" And the other one came up to Tom and demanded, "What's your name? Are you an Indian?" Tom ignored them. The pigeon came back, and the boys went to chase them again. Tom got up and went over to the bus stop, took the next bus downtown. He could have gone to the arena, like the other riders, but he preferred to be alone. The others spent the whole afternoon at the arena just talking. Talking business, talking horses, talking women. He had heard all their talk long ago. He got off the bus, walked back to the hotel, and sat in the lobby for an hour. A hotel lobby was the only place you could be alone in a crowd, alone and unnoticed. Then it was almost supper time. His supper time, since he always ate early. He went to the dining room and ate another steak. Then he left a call at the desk, went to his room and lay down and slept. When the phone call roused him and the girl said it was 7:30, he got up, showered again to ease the aches and the stiffness in that right knee, and sat relaxing for another half hour. Then he went over to the garden.